You don't always have to have everything figured out to start something. And a really big mantra I had when I started was, you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great.
Kill Complacency, a podcast that inspires growth and intentionality and helps you overcome your greatest obstacles.
As we celebrate episode 100, I wanted to do kind of a reflective journey on how we started the podcast, what are some highlights, what's some behind the scenes stuff, just to kind of commemorate everything we created. The podcast was kind of created because I wanted to be able to give back, and I wanted to have content to help educate and inspire people to do more with their lives. Russell Burnsworth talks about behind every mass movement, you have to have a future-based cause, an attractive character, and a common enemy. And I'd heard this on another podcast by Bridger Pennington and really like his stuff. And it really inspired me, like, okay, that's what we need to do. So my daughter and I, who she was helping me with this whole journey of me to give back, sat down with a whiteboard. We penciled that out. The future-based cause is really an intentional life, a life that is full and to the brim, and you can't have that without being intentional. Well, the enemy of intentionality would be complacency. And so that's what we decided was, let's kill complacency. Let's make that the enemy. And the attractive character is going to be the podcast guest. Or it's going to be the podcast listener who listens to it and is inspired and leans into the hard more. Our mission statement was to inspire intentional living by motivating others to handle hard better. Before every podcast, I write this on top of my page. I don't know if you guys realize, I'll get into that too, but you do a podcast, you have interview questions and you think through things. But that's the premise, to inspire intentional living by motivating others to handle hard better. So yeah, in the future-based causes, living intentionally. I think if we live intentionally, even if we're sick, we're not going to have regrets, right? It's the intentional living. You see that from Mondays with Maury, the book, where, yes, he's dying, but he shares it with the world, and it's so inspiring to spend, his last days with him because he's so inspiring. Somewhat, I have to contribute this to Russell Burns with the whole Kill Complacency. That's where it came from. But it was just my daughter and I brainstorming at a house. It's actually an Airbnb house we were officing out of at the time. And whiteboard and writing words and coming up with words, and we came up with Kill Complacency. So that's kind of the origin of it. I tend to be a guy that just jumps in head first and don't really know what I'm getting into, and so I'm always overcoming obstacles. Some of the challenges we've had to face was filling the pipeline. I didn't really think about what that's going to look like. Getting guests, which means you have to overcome rejection. Not everybody says yes. There's times where we do 3 in a day in an afternoon, and it's super fun, but it's a lot of energy you pour into it, and so that can be exhausting. I also struggle with relatability. Sometimes I just want to talk running or fitness or real estate, and I have to circle back to what the show is all about, and that is killing complacency and living intentionally and making it relatable to the guest. Obviously, we've had some technology issues to overcome as well. Always a learning curve, and I don't know that will ever be right. Super empowering for me is a book called Ask by John Victor Hansen, and it's just hundreds of stories of people asking. And Keziah, who should be on this as well, is the behind-the-scene person on this for this podcast. She does so much. But one thing she does is she helps fill the pipeline. And she asks people. She asks random people. And she asks people that she sees being intentional on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram. And so that has been really cool for me, is just to see what happens if you just ask. Some other things that we've really grown into with this is more accountability. You can't have a podcast called Kill Complacency if you're going to be complacent. Like, you've got to be living it. and you've got to be living it so you can talk it. So that's been cool. And it's been really cool to network with different people. When you ask, then you network, and then you get to know them. And I've got contacts in my phone now that are really cool contacts and will help me do all kinds of things. So that's been really fun. Some of the highlights, I would say, in memorable moments, there's obviously some guests that just blew me out of the water. Athena would be one of them. She's just somebody that attracts you to her. She's super real and authentic. And that was a really fun episode for me. I just felt like we really clicked. Benjamin Bender, I've known him for a while, and I've watched him grow, and it was really fun to rekindle that on that episode and talk through some things. Ryan Moore was another highlight for me with just his story and his realness and authenticity. Yeah, lots of people have been really inspiring, and I think the biggest thing that makes the podcast memorable is you just get surprised by the guest and you get surprised by what they say. It's interesting when you do a podcast, you end up doing a lot of research on the person in advance, but sometimes you just miss stuff, right? You look in the wrong places, or you just don't know XYZ about them, and then it comes out in the podcast. So that's always fun, and it's always memorable, and it's always sometimes usually a pivotal moment where you think the podcast is going one direction and you're like, hold on here, wait a minute. You said what? So that's really what makes these memorables. Some behind the scenes stuff you guys might be interested to hear in regards to the origin. We've recorded this podcast in several places, a commercial building. Honestly, when I first started this, I said, we have a storm shelter in our house because we're in Oklahoma, and it's in our basement, not our basement, it's in our garage. It's on the floor in the garage. And so I actually went in there and put plywood on it and then screwed soundboards to it. And that's where I recorded a couple podcasts, because I said I wanted it in the office. I wanted it at home, but I've got to have it be a room that's different. So this episode, actually, I decided I'm going to go back in there. So I'm actually recording this from a storm shelter in my garage that has soundboards on it. Recorded it at our office. We're at office every day, right at my desk. Those are Zooms. We've done it in our conference room at our office. For a while, I was renting a co-working place, and they have access to different rooms. And I actually did a couple there early on. It was kind of awkward there because there's just a couple couches in the one room, and it's all glass walls, so we try to get there early. But when people would walk by and you're doing these podcasts with a guest, and it's pretty tight air-wise, but yeah, everybody would look, and you just feel so awkward. You know, in your early days of doing anything, you just feel more awkward. That was very interesting to start there. We've used the Volt 405 in Edmond a lot. They have a podcast room. We do end up renting that. It costs some money, but it's really nice to go there, use their equipment, and just sort of set aside the day. That's what we're going to do. It's really interesting. I don't know if I expected to have so many different places where we do podcasts, but kind of a peek behind the scenes for you guys.
Over the years, I have been coached by countless mentors, and now I want to offer that to you as well. How? By Marty Hofmann's Life Coaching. This will be a 6-week program in which I will guarantee you will develop a more growth mindset. We will set goals and learn about the importance of the processes and habits behind those goals. I will also help you see your story differently as things happening for you, not to you. We will also be discussing your future self and give you clarity on who that is and what it looks like. For more information, please follow the link below or hop on martyhoffman.com and follow the coaching link.
You know, you don't always have to have everything figured out to start something. And a really big mantra I had when I started was, you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. If I look back at my first episodes, they're almost embarrassing, but I just wanted to get started. I wanted to inspire others to kill complacency, to live intentionally, and to help them be the attractive hero, but also to help them realize that you guys can do this. Like, it's just consistency and steps. The book Compound Effect has been super influential to me in regards to this and anything. Like, just lean into it and do the hard. Some of the challenges we've had to overcome would be just technology, figuring things out, different softwares to use for it. Keziah is my brilliant behind-the-scene technology person, and she's done a wonderful job. There's been different things we've used equipment-wise. Initially went out and just bought a bunch of stuff that don't necessarily even use anymore, but just didn't know what we needed, and so we went out and bought it. Kind of the steps to a good podcast would be you gotta find somebody. I mean, there's all the podcast stuff itself, but in regards to a guest, you gotta find them. And like yesterday, I get an email, and the guy just wrote a book. He looks pretty legit. And I forwarded the email to Keziah, and I said, hey, you should reach out to Larry and see if he wants to help us promote his book. So there's always the finding. There's the asking. You got to ask the person at that point. If they say yes, now you've got to get scheduled. You got to make your schedules work their schedules. When Chris Crone agreed to do it with us, I was really determined at that point actually to just do them on Tuesday podcasts. Just with everything going on, I was really trying to bundle my day. And he could do it Thursday at noon. And I was like, no, I'm not doing it. And Keziah was like, Dad, it's Chris Crone. Like, you've got to bend to him. So you do. You got to bend to your guests sometime. And so you got to find them. You got to ask them. You got to schedule it. Once they're scheduled, usually the day before, I start researching the people. Google them. Honestly, I a lot of times throw them at ChatGPT now. It'll give me specific websites to look at, LinkedIn accounts, so forth, so on. So rather than having to Google and find those things, I'll throw it at chat. I'll say, what do you know about Chris Crone or Benjamin Bender? And we go from there. Then you got to do the interview process where you sit down and you actually have a list of questions that you want to ask. A lot of times we create all these questions in our research, but I don't even get to them. Sometimes you're prompting the guests the whole time and you're out of questions. And so there's a whole interview process. But I think the biggest thing about the interview process is just to be curious and have a lot of fun and realize that that's what it's all about, is trying to get those best questions. You got to edit when you're done. You got to post it, let everybody know about it, and then get sponsorships. And that's where we are really right now. We're at 100 episodes, and we're trying to get sponsors and make this thing a business and not just something that we pour money into, but actually get some dollars behind to help other people promote their message as well. So it's kind of fun to be able to give back in that way. It's interesting as you do these things, as you do these interviews, sometimes episodes do not go as planned. We've had, I guess just some different challenges real quick. Technical issues. Recently, actually, it was funny. We always schedule it, and then we always send a confirmation the day before. And we had sent a confirmation, and I was on our software, Riverside, an hour before. I was making sure it was up and working. And all of a sudden, my screen went full, because when you're waiting, it's like a Zoom in a sense. When you're waiting for it, your screen is split and it goes full, which means a guest is coming on. And a guest came on an hour early, which wasn't a big deal. I was prepared, but just not mentally. So that was kind of fun. Sometimes your interviews, they do not go as planned. You got to pivot. You got to switch directions. Maybe the guest will say something that you didn't expect. I was filling out a guy one time, and I had thought from my research that he'd got divorced and then reconciled with his wife. And I brought that up, and it was not the case. He was a little bit bitter at his wife, so he got remarried. So that was a big pivot. I also learned from this, and it's a challenge because I can want to please people, is that sometimes you have to interrupt people because the podcast is not going as planned and it is not going the direction you want. So that's been a big learning curve as well, is just to interrupt and try to steer the conversation back to the direction you're trying to take it. I would say some personal benefits to a podcast, specifically a podcast like this, is the networking, the people you get to meet, but with that comes accountability. Like I said earlier, you can't have a podcast like this and not be living intentionally. The other thing it exposes me to is lots of books. I don't know how many books I've read or listened to this year that I otherwise would not have, that have had a big impact on my life. But literally these podcast guests are saying, hey, you should read The Most Amazing Development of Men. And sometimes you guys don't get it because they tell me these after the show. A lot of times there's some chit chat before and after the show. And a lot of the times once the show's over, we really kind of get into more personal stuff. And so, yeah, that has been really impactful for me is, the books I've picked up and listened to or read because guests suggested them. If you want to wear a billboard of a message of Kill Complacency or Live Intentionally, then check out my merch store. It's www.mindsetshop.com. Mindset is with an X, so it's MINDXET shop, SHOP.com. Mindsetshop.com. The accountability of living this life out. I started running a few years ago, as you guys all know, but that running also, for me, I guess there's some stability to our accountability to running hard when you have a podcast like this, because you just can't be complacent. And so I've set some course records because I've been pushing harder because of this. Another big takeaway early on, I can't remember which guest it was, but he talked about habit share and tracking your habits and having an accountability partner. And I love that idea. And so, I track all my habits now on my phone. I've got them all listed. You track it, and it will score you on the week and tell you how good your habits were. And then the other thing I think, another big takeaway for me with this is the ability to learn something new and always be exposing myself to different people. Years ago, I learned a quote, and it was, "You'll be the same today except for the people you meet and the books you read." And so for me, this podcast has really grown me personally just because of that and opening myself up to different people and different things. As we look at the future and where we're going in the future, I really try to gauge my life and measure my life by the 6 F's, which is faith, family, fitness, future self, finance, and fun. So the idea is that if I can be balanced, a lot of times, successful people are balanced in finance or fun or fitness, but they're not balanced with everything. And so the idea that we would try to focus on the 6 F's, and that's what I've tried to do here with this podcast, is have guests on that talk about faith or family or fitness. Future self would be learning, continual learning. Finances. I love real estate. I want people to have financial freedom, and I believe it's a way to get there. So a lot of times I'll have guests on that. And then fun. We don't want to just plow through life and grind through life. We want to have fun with life as well. We will probably continue to have topics around these things. I do sense that I myself have gotten more focused on the relational emphasis of things and the importance of being relational over maybe financially secure or super fit. Like, at the end of the day, what really matters, and it's probably relationships. Relationships are going to matter the most. So I think in the future, we'll probably have more episodes pertaining to marriage and parenting and forgiveness and things like that, because I just feel like relationships are so important. And then the other thing we're really going to try to add to the podcast to make it better is community involvement. We're going to add a feedback link where we want your guys' feedback. We want to hear what you have for suggestions. Maybe you have guests. Maybe you want to be a guest, and just be able to hear your suggestions and not just think that we've got the best thing. Another guest has reached out and asked if we would create a PDF of the book recommendations. So we'll probably do that. We'll make that available for somebody to reach out and get. And, just the contact information of the guest, how you can find them and follow them. So we're really learning as we do this, and we're trying to grow, and we're trying to add a lot of value. And we're trying to make you, the listener, the hero who lives intentionally and is their own hero because they've been inspired by others to handle hard better. And we really want to give back. We really want to help sponsors get their message out. So we're looking for suggestions and help, and really just to add more value. So if this is something you want to get behind, let us know. If you have some good tips for us, let us know. Like we said, this is a journey. This is something we're on, and we are so excited to be at episode 100. I think if you make it to episode 20 on podcasting, you're in like the top 2% of podcasters, just because so many people start these things and don't continue. And so we are excited to be a 1%er or a 2%er in regards to the podcast world as we continue to lean in and have these podcasts. And we can't do this without you guys, without your support. It's so fun to see how many people are listening and get feedback. And so please tell us your stories, share your stories with us, and how this has made a difference in your life. And help us by maybe making suggestions or guests. You'd be surprised how much brain space we take up sometime trying to schedule the next group of guests to interview. But again, thank you for your support, and I hope that this podcast, episode 100, has been kind of fun for you to listen to as we reflect back on our journey and share with you how it started and some of the challenges and celebrations we've had along the way. Enjoy.
I just wanted to thank you guys for listening to the end. In closing, I just wanted to add that if this message resonates with you, if it aligns with your values, and something in it today triggered something, then you can also look me up on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube. We are really trying to help people live more intentional lives to kill the complacency with which they have subscribed to. I know there's many ways which I get sucked in all the time. So if this is beneficial, follow me there.